Hi,
Hi, can you hear me?
Ramki. Can you
Yeah,
hear me? Yeah, I can hear you well.
great.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, Rita and P. Chaudhary. Thanks. Okay, so you can hear me well, right, Ramki? There are no issues.
No,
Can you just talk for a bit so that I can know that there's no disturbance
yeah.
or something?
So,
Just a
your
second.
voice is a little bit fragmented to me. I'm not sure if it's a signal issue at your end. Uh, are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, I can hear you quite well. Is my voice okay now?
I think it's better. Yeah.
It's better. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, we have about a minute left, but I think we can start. So, yeah, hello Shreya. Hi Harish. Maybe we'll just wait for a minute more because more people will be joining in.
Right.
Hi. Okay, so the clock has struck 8, so we'll begin. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. So, I'm Srinivas, and I am a art lover, and I play the Veena. I also write articles in various newspapers and magazines. I do this as a hobby, and I'm pretty much excited to be a part of this conversation. Now, I'll let L Ramakrishnan introduce himself.
Yeah. Hi, Srinivas. Thanks. So, yes, I'm Ramakrishnan and also known as Ramki. And I have been playing the Veena for most of my life. And I occasionally perform and I do teach. And I've also been involved in LGBTIQ advocacy and activism for quite a while. I'm a trained peer counselor. In other lives, I'm also a public health professional working around issues of accessible healthcare. Yeah. And I'm
That's
excited to
great to
be part
know.
of this discussion. Yeah.
Great to know, Ramki. And so let me give you all a little bit of an introduction about why we are having this conversation, a little bit about the context. So we all, me, Ramki, the other participants, along with Shreya and others, Singh, we all felt that quite a few conversations surrounding LGBTQIA plus issues are happening in the classical dance space. I mean, it may not be a lot, but it's happening at least sporadically. But when it comes to the classical music world, whether it be Carnatic or Hindustani, we don't have these conversations because there is still a lot of stigma attached to the queer identity. There is also a lot of questions. People ask, why do we need to talk about this? Can't someone just come, perform, and leave? Why is this issue relevant? So there are all sorts of dilemmas that people have, especially in the classical music space. So I'm telling this to you because the context of this conversation is quite specific. So we wanted to center it around artists who perform classical music, those who identify as queer people, their problems, their struggles, or their positive journeys as well, whatever they've experienced, with both their identities as a queer person as well as a musician. So this is the specific context of the conversation. But we have also invited a dancer to be a part of the panel to lend a little bit more of a flavor so that it's not very, very specific. I would also like to mention that any queer conversation definitely needs to be talked about, keeping into mind intersectionality. So we must definitely take into account the marginalization associated with religion, caste. It could be even about disability, whatever other factors are there also need to be taken into consideration. We acknowledge that the classical music space is a Brahminical space. And while curating this panel, we have taken utmost care to make sure that it is as diverse as possible. We took a lot of efforts and we tried to invite people from various different identities within the LGBTQ spectrum, as well as try to involve diverse people from various backgrounds and keeping into account marginalizations on account of religion, caste, etc. So we have done our best and we put together this panel. Some people couldn't join because of the stigma associated with the conversation, but we have made sure to take in their inputs. Those who have been marginalized on account of caste plus sexuality or religion plus sexuality, their inputs have been taken into account during the conversation to make it a little bit more diverse. So this is the specific context. Ramki, if you would like to add something.
Yeah. So this panel is at once homogeneous and diverse. It may be diverse with respect to gender identity and sexual orientation. We have trans people, we have queer people, we have an ally, but it's also disappointingly, if I may add, homogeneous with respect to caste and religion, or at least the caste and religion people were assigned at birth. And this is, a fatal flaw in all the kinds of conversations we have. But I wanted to give a shout out to Srini and Sai Shruti and others who've been trying to have conversations with folks outside of, the hegemonic caste and class and religious background in order to get inputs. And we acknowledge that, or we hope that there will be a day when everyone will feel safe enough to be part of this conversation. And also, while a lot has been said and written about, the Brahminical hegemony in Carnatic music, etc., I think when it comes to sexuality and gender identity, there's not been that many conversations. We in fact heard just yesterday of an entire classical music and dance festival in Vadodara, Gujarat, which is it's a 4 or 5 day event entirely being performed by queer and trans artists, which is amazing. But we hope to have more of this conversation here. And Chennai being, for better or worse, considered the epicenter of Carnatic music, I think a lot of this conversation also needs to percolate out into the milieu. I just wanted to end by recalling an episode that took place about 4 or 5 years ago. And it happened with the Hindu newspaper covering a particular event that happened in Chennai. It was a queer international film festival. And there was mention of the queer group Orinam, with which I'm associated, and it also named me, talking about the various activities that were done as part of this film festival. Word about me and my association with this group immediately, spread like wildfire among the Sabha organizers. And it's not that I'm a professional performer, but I used to play at least like 1 or 2 concerts every year. But the word really got out, and the kind of discussion that happened was rather ugly. Unfortunately, I had to hear some of it, but maybe it's that is again something that's informed my wanting to make sure that as teachers, like those of us who also teach, have to put in every effort to ensure that our teaching is not restricted to folks of a particular sexuality or gender or caste or class or religion. So I've been fortunate to have a diversity of students. And my guru also, Srimati Kalpagam Swaminathan, had students of a range of backgrounds from Sri Lanka and India when she taught at the Carnatic Music College. So, okay, we go on to the conversation. Over to you, Srini.
Yeah, thanks, Shanti, for sharing that. And I'm really happy that I could learn Veena from you. Like, Ramki is one of my Veena gurus. And I think it's really important for any queer person to have a teacher who is queer affirmative, because ultimately it really matters to us. Our identity really matters to us. And that shouldn't be a hurdle in learning any art form, whether it be Carnatic or anything else, is my opinion. So, with no further ado, let me give you the introduction for the first speaker who will be joining us, which is Rumi Harish. Rumi Harish is a queer trans man. He started learning Hindustani classical when he was 9 under Guru late Pandit Ramarao Naik, who was his principal guru. with whom he trained for about 17 years. It was through his guidance that Rumi cultivated a passion for art, and he started performing on Hindustani music stages at the age of 12. His performances have spanned across different cities in various prestigious festivals. He has learned from several other gurus as well, his recent guru being Pandit Sudhindra Bhaumik. And in the recent years, he has been experimenting with a lot of different music genres, not limited to Hindustani. And he is also focused on plays. Like he has created a monologue play on Rag Kalyani, which was staged in 2009. He has worked with S.R. Ramakrishna on fusion compositions based on Tumris and Sufi music. He has also worked very closely with theatre personalities like Prasanna B. Jayashree, B. Suresha, and many others. Recently, he directed music for a film, Kaudi, directed by Ravindranath Sirivara. He has also performed abroad in several countries. And Rumi, along with Sunil Mohan, has worked in the TIS project on exploratory study on discrimination on non-normative genders and sexualities in public spaces. And Rumi has also written the play Freedom Begum. So he is a multifaceted personality who is a Hindustani vocalist, a playwright, a performer, and most importantly, is a gender rights activist who is exploring the classical space while battling stereotypes of gender, the tradition of bhakti, and elements of melody. So let me add Rumi to the conversation. Hi, Rumi. Can you hear us
Hi,
well?
I can hear, and I thought such a long bio could have been cut. Yeah.
Okay, I
Okay.
mean, okay, I just have a couple of questions for you. So my first question would be, in the generally conservative world of classical music, what was your journey like embracing your identity as a transgender man and as an activist who addresses injustices including casteism, transphobia, and religion-based prejudice? You could share your journey.
Uh, See, that's a little strange. Then, so in my life, I kind of stopped believing in God at the age of 15, 16. I don't know why, but the whole thing. Until then, I had actually not so much issues. And when I started learning, and then so my training started officially under Pandit Ramarao Nayak, the Guru, and all that from 9 years. But I was put into train as in like my parents, and like not parents, my mother, my aunts and uncles who claimed that they are musical family, and so they put me into singing at the age of 6. So I was not allowed to see the outside world. Uh, Two things happened, and one is that I losing some kind of trust or faith in the kind of worship, devotion, etc., that is done in a Brahmin family, which disturbed me very heavily, and I don't know why that did that. Also because I was in love with my the person who came to work domestic with domestic help. The person who came, I was in love with them, and then there was this casteism that was being practiced by my grandparents and others, except my mother. So I really, I think that was one of the reasons why I started hating that whole thing, and not allowing somebody somewhere and all that. And then second very funny thing was that my grandmother, whenever my teacher would come home to teach, my grandmother and my grandfather, which is my mother's mother and my father's father, would sit like this because they assume that Hindustani music is Muslim music. So then it was very funny for me because I also, like an idiot, sang Allah Jane, Maula Jane in a Ganesha festival, and my grandmother threw me out of the out of some relative's house because I sang that time. So had such experiences and which led me to this feeling. And then first, the second part is this, that my teacher used to, initially we would go on walks in the evening, so Ramarauji and me. And then I used to, when once I got my vehicle, we used to go ride on the vehicle, and then he would take me to very special kind of people who would sell special spinach and different varieties of spinach, and then people who would sell very specific vegetables. And then his thing was he would go and sit with them, as in like on the street, and talk to them like for hours together and spend time. And so somewhere I started realizing how he introduced me to the world outside, because if you are made to sing 12 hours a day in home by the great parents who actually made me love music and also hate music. So, 12 hours is not a joke. And then, I mean, yeah, my brain was like almost trained like a computer, and then I had to untrain and unlearn all the nonsense that several classical musicians think that is the real practice. Like, for example, the whole Sarle verse, Sarle verse,
Yes.
what they call, no, like paltas, basically. Sarigama gama gari gari gama gari 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 sarigama gama gari gari. But like, the point of practicing that, what is the point of practicing that is the question. So how long? And then, as opposed to that, then what else? Huh? So, this whole thing about, the devotion of God, the practice in Sarle and the challenge to just sing one note for 5 hours in a day. So these three things, if you look at, I mean, for me, the first time, the gender discrimination, caste discrimination, and the discrimination on religion, everything came across through this practice that was given, and the forced devotion. At one level, my teacher would say that every composition has Krishna and Radha. I'm like, why Krishna and Radha? And for me, I wanted to like throw out Krishna and sing only for Radha. So such kind of funny things, funny feelings. Then it was funny, and then it grew quite seriously. Then I don't know. I think I kind of started one. I mean, I've written and spoken in several spaces that I think why I lost my space in the concerts circles, and all these issues were there. Along with it, my questioning in terms of dress, especially the attire, and I think it is very specific for women. Man can wear shirt and pant, kurta, pajama, and then what is the panchagi, what the mundu and all that. If I wear mundu and kurta, they will not like. Then if I have to wear a sari, and I cannot hold a sari, it keeps falling off in concerts. Then I will stand in underwear. And apart from that, I also see. I think it's also this whole thing of comfort. No, when you sing, and if you're not having something that is comfortable on your body, and if your body is in deep discomfort, how can you sing? People never realize that. I used to cry. I used to cry, that I couldn't sing concerts well. The moment I changed into a gender neutral attire, I started losing concerts. One, then second thing, I became very political in terms of choosing my compositions. I decided not to sing the Purandar Dasa at the age of 17. I decided that I will not sing devotional, over melodramatic songs, and then, uh, mm, actually, I was quite in a way. Hindustani music is really that way, very open. Hindustani music is really that way, very interesting, because In this Saya, Gunya, Sajna, Balama, we spend our lives. Nobody will know whether it's God or not. So that's a great thing. But even then, sometimes it becomes very difficult because the teachers have this natural, or not, it's not natural, it is constructed musicianship show that you're very devotional. The amount of your music skills are based on your devotional capacities, which I really hate. And
And
so that was
Rumi,
one of the that was one of the reasons I was thrown out of the circles. And then when I was being thrown out of the circles, I also kind of changed my compositions. I changed my repertoire. I said I will not sing this, I will not sing that, I will not sing this, and so it happened simultaneously on both sides. Yeah.
so as you said, you wanted to change your compositions. In that context, I'd like to ask you, you decided to deeply explore Khyal music a few years ago, right?
Mm.
What
Mm.
prompted you to do this, and why did you want to do it?
And that is this simple thing, that it allows you to think. Khayal means thought. So you're allowed to think. It gives you the freedom to think through one framework which you can break. And the framework can be as silly and simple, which you can transcend and imagine whatever abstract thing. It is very abstract, so it's very nice. Like you have lyrics like in major ragas, which Mia Tansen made. That Mia Kitodi, you have a composition where it says, this monkey is not letting me cross the road to go and fetch a pot of water. I want to go meet my girlfriend, and this monkey is jumping around. What is this? Daya, daya, baat do bar bhai meka, langurua bharan det gagariya. What else is that? And these people don't even tell you. They will say Krishna is trying to. See, it clearly says langur, and they want to make it into Krishna. What else can you do? So it's really funny, and that gives the freedom. So I think, don't you think it's the best thing? I think it is more queer, it is more open to anything that you want to make it, the more abstract it is. And so I said that is my medium. And then Thumris, of course.
And Rumi, I would like to ask you if you could tell us a few words about your mother, Kanaka Murthy, and how influential she was in your journey.
Kanakamurti, I had a love-hate relationship with her because that mad woman made me practice 12 hours a day. So even today I hate her because she snatched my ice creams, she smashed my sweets, she everything, papa to everything. Like she was like a rowdy in the house. She would take extra extra ice cream, extra this thing from me, and like she would force me to practice like 10 to 12 hours every day. I used to hate that, and I really hate it even now. But that woman made me fall in love with music. Like one thing, so I am actually started doing something really crazy. I have started writing my sexual biography, where I'm trying to kind of understand how the feeling of sexual doesn't necessarily mean it's associated with somebody else. It is also something that is within you, what you feel, what you perform, what you so sexual. What is then sexual? Sexual is something that will make you uh, feel the pleasure without feeling shame. So this whole thing of shame, pleasure, and like how the crazy 377 Act used to say, carnal pleasure. So I really want to talk about the carnal pleasure, not in context of human beings, but non-human beings, which I fell in love with, like swaras of a certain raga, maybe words of a certain composition, like Gulzar's poems, Gulzar's film songs, maybe this one Abida Parveen songs, somebody's voice, Kishore Kumar's voice. So there are all several things that you fall in love, which can be sexual. And I want to write a sexual biography like that, and I really want to. Am I answering the question? I don't know.
No,
Did I lose it? Okay.
it's
So
okay. We
basically,
love the conversation.
so I can you just repeat the question? I want to
No,
just
I
bring it
asked
back.
you a few words about your mom, Kanakamurthy, but
Yeah. So,
you,
yeah, no. So basically, what I'm trying to tell is that she was the one who introduced me to this world. That you can fall in love with things which are not human. Like she fell in love with stone. She fell in love with hammer. We used to sing to her, saying Kanaka Murti Hammer Dharini types. But that she used to. I mean, even at her 70s, she used to work 10 hours a day. So that is the kind of madness that I fell in love, and I've seen her. So now I've started working like that now. So I wake up at 2, start working at 3, go on till 11 in the night. So yeah,
okay.
it's not an
And
influence. I think it is like a ghost.
okay, so one question. So I witnessed your play journey from A to E and more, and you use so many striking and diverse songs and poems to express your thoughts on the life journey of transgender folks mainly. So in that, I would like to ask you to, if you could tell me the interpretation of an Allama Prabhu Vachana, Bayalu Bayalane, which you had performed. If you could just tell me your interpretation, how you reinterpreted it to in the context of transgender men and their struggles.
Oh. Again, Allama Prabhupada Vachana is someone who is very abstract and allows you to interpret. And of course, my this is interpretation. If I go into the literature world, they'll kill me. But I really love that. First time I read that, I really felt. One is he says Bayalu Bayalane Dipti, which means the openness so shows openness. That is, you grow openness to become more open. You know, and in queer world or trans world, you are open to the world. You are open to the world to the extent that they can abuse you. They can do all kinds of atrocious things to at the same time respect you. They can love you, they can do everything. So in the same way, you're open to the world. And see, I think somewhere the openness is also about the vulnerability, especially when you are a trans man. Is it like your body conditioning, your body language is drained into you? It's like drilled into you in childhood that it takes time to leave, but that is the struggle. And I think that Vachana speaks that, says you grow openness, you become openness, and then your feelings are open space. Your bhavane, feeling, bayalu jivana, which is your life is open space. Then bayalu bayana, then again, if you start cultivating openness, another thing what comes out is also being open. Now, so this and then before I saw you, before what is it? Ninna Pujita. The people who actually fell in love with you or Pujita or who has worship that they say were already open, and now I understood this, and now I'm in love with you types. So I think Allama talks. I think it is a very current transition kind of vachana. I don't know how many people have heard it like this, so I'm still alive.
Okay, so that's about it from me. Ramki, would you like to add something or do you have any questions for me?
Just one, if we have the time. So, yeah, so Romy, I've had the pleasure and honor of knowing you for nearly 20 years. And when you actually chose to publicly come out as a trans man, I was just curious if that, change that was made very public, did that impact you in terms of your musical career, or had you already moved away from the hyper conservative elements of the classical music? spaces?
I was already thrown out. I was already thrown out.
Okay, so
I
this did
was
not make an
thrown out.
additional difference.
No, I was thrown out at the age of 32. I took 10 years to come out as trans man. That's it. Because I was
Okay.
still thinking that, there is still the hope that this whole Kacheri circuit will somehow take me back because I haven't lost my skills. Of course, now because of the transition, but then I hadn't lost my skills. But the question is, nobody thinks about the skills. It's all about your past background, your marriage, your status of having children, how family person you are, and how devout you are, and how moralistically correct you are, or not politically correct also, moralistically correct. That's all matters in the tertiary circuit. So I was already thrown out. Just by the fact that I was not married, first step was I was thrown out. Then they came to know that I am queer. Then they further threw me out. Then that was the end. Then I came out as a trans person. Then nobody talked to me.
Mhm.
That's it.
Okay.
It was really moving to hear from you, Rumi, and we really thank you from the bottom of our heart for being a part of this conversation. So thank you so much, and
Sorry.
we'll see you later. Yeah.
Acha,
So
if there are, when you have question answer session, just ping me. I'll get back to
sure,
work and come back.
definitely,
Okay.
definitely. Thank you so much for joining in, Rumi. Bye. Okay, that was a really fantastic session, Ramki. So, do you have any closing thoughts about the conversation that happened?
I just think that Rumi is very brave, very strong. I wish I had, half of the courage he has had. And while he's able to speak about it with sort of a wry smile, I'm sure that the being banished from the classical world did have an impact. I mean, it must have been hurtful at some point. But yes, I really applaud his courage and his integrity to be true to himself in every dimension.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So let's move on to the second speaker. So let me introduce her. The second speaker this evening will be Apeksha. Apeksha identifies as a neuroqueer person. She is a trauma-informed, queer affirmative, neurodivergent inclusive therapist. So she is a counseling therapist basically who works with young adults and adolescents. So she has a passion for helping people and genuinely being there for them. So this has been shown through her experience of working with clients living with anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, abuse, violence, suicidal ideations, and other crisis narratives. She has worked very deeply in these sections. And she has also, apart from therapy, she has experience in conducting workshops, teaching, facilitating listening circles, etc. And she follows an intersectional approach to therapy through a feminist and a humanistic lens. And her inclinations are towards gestalt therapy, mindfulness, and self compassion based practices. So, apart from this, she is a trained Bharatanatyam dancer who learned Bharatanatyam for 17 long years. She is a performer as well. And she is also a sports person. So, quite a multifaceted personality. So, Apeksha, let's just invite Apeksha. Apeksha, if you could send us a request to add you in. Okay, let me just see if you are in. Okay, I pressed invite Apeksha, so you should have gotten an invite by now. Just let us know if you're having any problems. I think.
Hello.
Hi, Apeksha. Hi. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I have a couple of questions for you. So it was really a great experience putting together these questions because you are such a versatile person, and I really wanted to get the best out of you within the short time. So thank you so much for being here. First of all, we really value your experience as a therapist as well as a dancer, queer dancer who's about to share their experiences. So my first question to you would be, uh, so you identify as a neurodivergent queer person. So we really don't have a lot of awareness about neurodivergence. So if you could talk a little bit about your experiences as a neurodivergent queer person and how it impacts your art. So that is one part of the question. And also you could share your experiences as a counseling psychologist or a therapist who's also a dancer. So you must come across many queer artists. They could be your friends or they could be your clients. So, could you tell us what their unique challenges are? Because they're straddling two identities as a queer person as well as an artist. So, you could talk to us about this.
Sure, sure. Before starting, I think I would just like to start off with a disclaimer that I will be speaking about my experiences. I'm absolutely open to people here watching the live or even later disagreeing with me, having different opinions. I'm absolutely okay with that. What I would urge you all to do is not to discard my experience, because I'm going to be speaking about my experiences as a queer, as an indie person living in India. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Srinivas, and for the question. Queerness is much more than just gender and sexuality. Queerness is a way of life, and for me, queerness has meant much, much more than just my gender identification, my sexuality. The way I look at the world, the way I respond, the way my body responds to certain things, the way I speak, the way I think just my beliefs, everything is very different. Queer is different. Neurodivergence means that there are the chemicals, the wiring in the brain is very different. How and neurodivergent folks, nervous systems respond to certain situations are very different, right? So answering to what you asked, how it has impacted, I think for me, the biggest challenge that I've faced is queerness. My queerness is that I don't believe in heteronormativity. I do not believe in the heteronormative beliefs, the timelines, what is supposed to be done, and all those things. And being trained in Bharatanatyam, being a classical dancer for nearly 2 decades, of course, it has been challenging. I do want to acknowledge what Rumi said, because I felt so heard and seen, especially the clothing wise, because that is something I resonate with, and it has been so challenging. Uh, I think being inclusive for me would mean ask, instead of assuming just because I look like a female. Just because I'm assigned female at birth, it does not mean that I identify as a woman. I don't. But all my life, I had to wear Kalakshetra saris, which does not go well with my gender. I'm a demigirl. It's absolutely, it felt very wrong. It felt very exactly what Rumi was speaking about when I had to go, okay, even if not on stage, but if I had to wear that for rehearsals or for photo shoots, whatever, it just felt not me. It felt very uncomfortable for me both ways. I'm autistic, so I had sensory issues with the material on my body, on my skin. And the second thing, it does not align with my gender identity, which is very difficult, right? I think the whole conversation about queerness or sensitizing, I think what I would want to mention, the most important point is that ask rather than assume. I would have loved, and honestly, I would love if there are choices. If I have choices, I'll give you some examples, and I'm pretty sure some people might get pissed off with me on this, and absolutely okay to have different opinions. I do not believe in patriarchy. I do not believe in heteronormative um, heteronormative ways or ideas. So it's not that I disrespect tradition. No, I have different values. When it comes, I'll give you some examples. When it comes to touching the feet of senior folks or senior artists, gurus, I'm not comfortable with that. But I've had to, because I started training when I was 7 years oldish, and that was taught. It's like, if you respect, this is a form of respect. So every time go and touch. And in my body, I knew it's very uncomfortable because I don't really align with that. But because it's tradition, because that is how you're supposed to show respect, it was very difficult. And that's the thing. I didn't have anybody to speak about this. It was a very, I think for most queer artists, queer folk in general, it's a very isolating experience. Even if I went and told this, it's like, oh, but how can you, because this has happened with me, how can you say this? They are our guru and you're supposed to do this. Where is my choice, right? Where is my choice of going and, my choice of choosing that how do I want to show respect? Now, fine, I'm in my 20s, I know what choice and how I would want to show respect is very different. But then I also know how I had been neglected, because there was, right, I'm pretty sure there would be many queer folks who might resonate with this. My biggest fear is of rejection, of not being accepted, because that's what happens. That's what happened. I'm atheist. I'm agnostic. I don't believe in God. And I don't have any problem with the art form, to be very honest. I think how it has been gatekept for so many years, that is what I do not agree with. I would, it is movement, right? Bharatanatyam, yes, okay, you have stances, it's supposed the Angashadi, all those things, fine. But it can also be used to express different different social issues, different social concerns, which I would love to, I would want to. I remember many, like in the last 2-3 years, queer artists writing songs, composing shabdams, I think, on queerness and queer folks, and that was beautiful. I would want to do something like that. I would rather perform for that, which is the same thing, use the same adavus, use the same nritta, use, of course, abhinaya, to represent that, rather than same Ramayana, Mahabharata. I don't have any issues with that. That's the thing, right? There is no disrespect. However, can't we, I would want to rather use it for these social concerns rather than praying, or rather than worshipping some god, because I do not feel bhakti. I don't know what that emotion is, because I just don't know what bhakti is, and I would that's not what I feel connected to, right? And I think one more biggest thing that I've faced is the dressing. Because, and this is a conversation I've had with queer folks, like you asked, with my queer, I would say, acquaintance with artists in the industry. Also, there are so many folks who are closeted who choose not to come out because of the fear of rejection. I've lost the number of count of how many people I know who are queer in the dance field and are extremely scared to come out, because of course there's going to be rejection, of course there's going to be not accepted. And my whole point is, ask us, no? When we are joining class, okay, new student, anything, ask. For some folks, pronouns are important. Ask pronouns, ask gender. I think it's high time we stop assuming and asking what are some things you're comfortable with. I don't think there was ever, apart, except for a few times, there was never, would you be comfortable to wear a sari? You know, I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was I had to look like a dancer, which means jhumkas, bindi, I don't know, like don't cut your hair, wear Indian clothes, which I really don't resonate with. That does not align with me as a person, with my gender. But I had to do that for 10 plus years because I had to look presentable, right? I
Yeah, I
honestly believe,
completely get.
yeah, you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
look.
Sorry to.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, yeah. Like when you spoke about using art for various other reasons, it needn't necessarily be associated with devotion, etc. So in this context, I'd like to ask you, like, do you believe that art helps relieve stress or tension, or like practicing art, is it something that's therapeutic, especially in the context of queer people? Like we have a lot of struggles. So the practice of an art form, do you think it helps in relieving stress, or what is your opinion on that?
Yeah. Um, this has two parts to it, right? One is dance, any form of dance is movement. Any form of art helps us connect, like our bodies connect with art. But many of queer folks who haven't experienced safety, movement can be very difficult. It can bring up a lot of feelings. While dance can be extremely therapeutic for some folks, it can be very difficult because in our bodies we might not feel safe. I have had phases where I think opening movements, any movement which required like open movements, I was not okay with because I just felt so scared in my body. Even now, I think there are some movements which I cannot do. My body just cannot do because there is so much fear. When it comes to closed off or, just here movements, that is okay. But when it comes to, and in Bharatanatyam, the Angashuddhi is that, right? I don't think body feels safe. So it's queer folks are humans as well. So it's the same. Movement can be super helpful, definitely. But if there is trauma, if we are not allowed to express ourselves, if there is so much of trauma that we are living with, or if we are in spaces where there is no acceptance, movement, as therapeutic as it is, can be difficult as well, right? Because body remembers things. Body, it needs safe environment to move. I'm very mindfully using the word move rather than dance because it's any form of movement I'm talking about. And I wanted to add some. Yeah, yep, that's it.
I mean, that was a really great perspective because we also need to look at the other side, as you said. That was a really valid perspective, in my opinion. So I have one last question. Yeah,
I
sorry.
just wanted to add one point, sorry. So I know many folks who have reached out to me and told me that I love dance. It's the same with me as well. I love dance. My body loves dance, but I'm just not able to dance. And there is a huge history of trauma. There's a huge history of feeling so unsafe, consciously feeling anxious or consciously feeling so difficult that it can be very difficult. And with me, right, when there is neurodivergence, for me, what works is I need challenging rhythms. I have an ADHD brain, which means that anything which is not as challenging, if there are challenging rhythms, give me different nuddies, that's what keeps me exciting, and I love it. I love fast paced rhythms, just different combinations of rhythms. But when it comes to a mundane thing, it gets boring. Similarly, for other folks, it's like we have to follow this. As much as I get the importance, and I'm not against it, I'm for that. We need practice. We need to start from adobos and then the basic items and all the other things. What we tend to miss out on is our bodies might not allow that, right? And there are so many people who have wanted to have this conversation with me. I am a dancer. I love dancing, not able to move. What do I do? Honestly, friend, I feel the same. It has been months or years. My body doesn't move. I have a hall. I have music, but then it's so difficult to move. And I just want to tell this to everybody out there. I see you. I absolutely know how difficult it can be, and that is absolutely okay. Our bodies, when they are ready, when I know when my body is ready, I'll be there, I'll be dancing. But until then, it's okay to just let it be. There is a lot of grief, definitely, to nurture whatever is happening, just to stay with it. And it does not say anything about you. It does not say anything about your love for dance. It does not say anything about your skills. Your body is going through something. You are experiencing grief. It's okay. There will be a day, there will be some time where we will feel connected to that part, and that would be great. And I really hope to reach that part soon. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
Wonderful message, Apeksha. I mean, I could resonate with it, and I mean, it's really valuable that you shared this point, and particularly that it. So, I have one last question for you. So, you have trained as a Bharatanatyam dancer. but you have also moved on to performing various other styles of dance. For instance, like having a look at your social media page, I could see that you don't miss even one queer event that's happening in the city. You go there and you just express yourself, you be yourself, and you perform so beautifully. So, how was this experience for you? Do you feel it's liberating to move on from classical to other genres? How is that?
I think mixed feelings. As much as I love Bharatanatyam, yes, it has its rigidity, rigid um, forms. This is how it's supposed to be. I think at queer events, especially, I was just open. It takes so much. I think many Bharatanatyam, just classical dancers would resonate with this. Is the moment you have trained for decades in this classical art form, any other form, if your hand is not symmetrical, you're just like, it's not nice. No, no, this is not what I'm doing. It does not feel okay to my body. Obviously, it felt that way. But then these days, when I'm performing, it is unlearning. I think Rumi mentioned about it. There is so much unlearning that needs to happen. I'm really letting myself say it's okay. It does not have to be symmetrical. If it is, it's okay, right? So there is so much unlearning. Liberated, yes. It just gives me so clearly you can see that it just gives me so much joy to perform in these events, to just express. There's no gatekeeping. There's no, oh, it needs to be that. Sit in more Arumandi. Your hand, Angashuddhi is not okay. Move a little more. Nahi hai. It's just go do your own thing. And people, oh my God, queer folks are amazing. Thank you so much for the support, folks. And there was so much encouragement. I don't think I've heard such compliments in my entire life that I hear from queer folks. There is some amount of, I don't know what, but there is so much connection. Liberating, yes, as much as I love Nritta part of Bharatanatyam, freestyle Bollywood is something I think which my body absolutely loves and feels connected to. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. I just went into.
Yes. Ramki, do you want to go?
Yes, I did. First of all, thank you for sharing this. Now, barring the occasional Ardhanarishwara in Bharatanatyam performance, a lot of the performances are cast very much in a gender binary, whether you're talking about, the Nayika or Nayika roles, or even otherwise, there's a sense of what movement is appropriate for what assigned sex and associated gender. Does that make you feel, or has that made you feel dysphoric, and how have you coped with it?
Yes, I'm just thinking about it now because also there is, I think, my body, there's a lot of body shaming that has happened, and I think this is very common. Just because you look this way, you are okay for, let's say, masculine roles, let's say, or for Rakshasas roles, demons, because I look a certain way. But then the thinner folks, or who are much more who look who are on the thinner scale are they can be Naikas, a very flowy movement, doesn't matter how the body allows it or not, it is you look like this. Okay, Ganesh and Karthik, let me take that example. Of course I've been given role of Ganesh, but then and then somebody who is thinner than me is Karthike. Because why? Obviously, King's role has been given to obviously all these roles, which has, I think, dysphoric. I haven't really thought about it, so I will have to think about it. It has made me feel uncomfortable and less worthy. It's like, as much as I would want, I of course have a feminine side, right? I would have wanted to do some role which has Shringara, which has movements, which has like flowy movements. But then apparently I look a certain way and I fit okay for this character. Somebody like a king, somebody like Ganesh, somebody like Shiva, but not for Lasya related characters or Shingara related characters. I wouldn't say dysphoric, but I think uncomfortable, yes, and I would have loved to do that. Definitely.
Thank you.
Wonderfully answered. So thank you so much, Apeksha. It was such an enriching experience listening to you, and I was just really moved because many of the points you said I really resonated with. and so many other dancers will also agree with you, and your perspectives have been very valuable for us. So thank you so much for joining in, and
Thank
please do
you.
stay in touch.
Of
Yeah, see
course.
you.
Thank you. Yes.
Bye.
How do I
Thanks.
do it?
Yeah. Srinivas, would you be able to invite Mahita and Ramnath?
Yes, let
Yeah.
me see.
Okay.
Maybe you can start giving the introduction for them, Karthik. I will
Yes.
invite them.
Yes. So after Rumi and Apeksha, we have Mahita from Australia and her dad Ramnath, who is going to be our token cishet man on this panel, but he's an ally. And Mahita is a second generation Australian Indian, born and brought up in Melbourne, Victoria, now living in Sydney. Carnatic music and the Veena have been part of her life from very young. Mahita has performed Veena in Melbourne, in Sydney, and in Chennai. And her father, who's joined here, Ramnath, hi, uh,
Hi.
is someone again I've known for 20 plus years as a vainika, and he and his brother have been play amazing duets. They performed. If you were in Chennai this year, you would have listened to them at the Academy on January 1st, and so. I've known Ramnath for a long time, and I've met Ramnath and Gopinath, in person on their visits to Chennai. We played music, we jammed together. But just a short while ago, I happened to see a post of his on Facebook where he had written about his daughter Mahita's marriage to a woman, Petra, and I saw that a lot of other Indians, including people in Australia and some people from India, were congratulating him heartily or congratulating her heartily. So it made me wonder about how he, as a person from a traditional, all the trappings that go with being a Carnatic musician, right? How he, as a father, responded to his daughters coming out. But I think we should first center Mahita's voice and listen to you, Mahita. What were your experiences? What have been your experiences as a second gen musician in India? And I know, as a member of the diaspora, the Indian circle, the music circle, the dance circle, the social circle all overlap. So it's actually being able to separate different parts of your life, like an Indian, cultural Veena player life and a queer life and all that is very difficult to do. But I would love to hear some more. We would love to hear about your journey and, experiences that you may have had, good, bad, and the ugly, in terms of being able to be visible as a queer person and a Carnatic musician. Over to you, Mahita.
Thank you so much for having me on as well. Yeah, I am up at 1:30 a.m. But I think this is important, and it's certainly not a conversation that I've seen had much. So you spoke, Ramki, about compartmentalizing, I think, which is something that I've had to do for a very long time. Even before I kind of identified that I was queer or knew that that was happening, there's definitely, growing up in Melbourne, in Australia, there's like a racial aspect. So my, Asian and white friends at school didn't really know about the concerts and the practice and the music that I was doing outside of school. And there was a disconnect between my culture at home and what was happening with my friends at school, to the point where I actually, and I still do, I have kind of two accents. One which is a really Australian accent that I have when I'm at work and at uni and that kind of thing, and then one that happens when naturally I'm around other Indian people or at home. And so then to go from that to separating my queer self, I think for a very brief period of time, it was, the kind of my queer identity was solely for me, and I was coming to terms with that. So there was kind of three things going on, and then slowly it became integrated. And that came full circle really at the wedding, because I was, so like you said, in Melbourne, in the diaspora, and particularly for us, I think growing up in a musical family and you know, my dad, Appa and Gopi Chittappa, they're very active in the music scene here. So many of our friends and our family are also musicians, are dancers, are all very active in the scene, or they're rasikas. So it's all interconnected. And so to be able to celebrate my relationship, which I accept is like an amazing privilege for us here, to be able to celebrate that with all of these people, my community that I'd grown up with, as well as all of my queer friends, and have everything kind of connect together. That was an amazing moment, and probably capitalized by Appa actually found that I wanted to sing at my wedding. So I play Veena, but I sing as well. And we found a song, and being able to perform that, we actually changed some of the terms and the pronouns in it as well. But that, I think, for me, is one of my favorite parts of that whole experience, being able to kind of like, yeah, bring everything together and finally live like a whole kind of life rather than be all of these separate identities.
Right. Yes, I did listen to that Begada Padam. It was marvelous.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the coming out. Is it something that just happened pre-marriage, or had you been leading up to it for a while? How was that, if you don't mind sharing? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I came out to so my family, about nearly 4 years ago now. I was out to
July
my friend.
2019.
Yeah, July 2019, which was actually when I met my current partner. So we were kind of like, oh, this is serious, it's time. And I'm queer, so there was all, you know, I think, you know, Apeksha talked about that fear of rejection. And Appa, like my family, they've never given me any reason to think that I would be rejected for whatever reason. But I think that fear is so innate in us as humans, let alone queer humans. So it was there. And well, I think I was out to my friends and a lot of the rest of kind of my social life from maybe 10 years even before that. I don't know if you knew that, Appa. Yeah, and then we, when we kind of announced the wedding and invited a lot of the community to the wedding, so I think at one of our events we had like 300 plus people, all very close family, all like pretty much all members of the diaspora here. Everybody, we have not had one bad reaction, at least not to our faces. So everybody has been incredibly welcoming. So that was only about a year ago that happened.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And so just also wanted to ask if you're being a musician, you're being a Veena player, the art itself in some way influenced your sort of coming to terms with your own identity as someone who's queer? Was there any connection at all?
I don't think so. I think, but I do think that in coming to terms with my sexuality and really having that introspection of knowing myself, it has made me come back to music. So in a way that I didn't really connect with before. When we talk about classical music in particular as well, I know Rumi and Apeksha both mentioned like religion in music, and obviously Carnatic music, at least the majority of compositions that are rendered kind of regularly, they're all devotional. So it was, I actually learned Hindustani for a brief period, and I feel like learning Hindustani allowed me to connect with music, because the compositions that we were learning were not necessarily devotional, and a lot of them were kind of love songs and that kind of thing. So it allowed me to connect with music, and then kind of appreciate that in the Carnatic stuff that I was learning. And then coming from there, to now where I have a lot more life experience. I know myself, I know what I love, I know what I like, then I'm able to relate to the songs that I'm singing a lot, much more. And in terms of Veena playing, I think I've played Veena since I was 6 or 7 years old, so a long time now. And although our Barney is very much follows like vocal traditions, I think for me it's the instrumentality of it that draws me to Veena, and kind of just you can play. You don't have to play a note. Even if you're just playing that sa and the sa resonates, that like touches something within you. For that, it doesn't matter who you are.
Mm. Right. And you probably don't have to question the lyrics, some of which might be problematic.
No, yeah.
Is that right?
Irrelevant.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks. So Ramnath, can we hear from you as a little bit about your journey and how you got to hear about this whole LGBTIQ thing, and how, as a father and as a musician, your journey was? Anything you feel comfortable sharing would be great. But please go ahead. Yes.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Srinivas and Ramki and others who are online. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm carrying a cold, so my voice is really croaky. So please excuse me for that. LGBTIQ, I think the term is new, right? But I'm aware of it from my college days, from the College of Engineering, Guindy. I had a classmate who was gay, and a couple of them were couples. But then after we all finished, we all went in different directions. And 2 years later, I heard one of the guys committed suicide because the other person was forced to marry, and then they split. So I had that kind of, there was awareness. And then
was
when I
this
came
the
to Australia,
70s, 80s?
76 to 81.
Okay.
I migrated to Australia in 1986. I met this, wonderful Bharatanatyam dancer, Dr. Chandrabanu. People in the art world, even in India, know about him. He was a disciple of Adaya Lakshman. He was out even at that time. His partner, Jeffrey Goldie, was an artist, painter, and they made a wonderful team. And Chandrabanu invited me to join his musician team. So I performed live for them. And so I interacted with them for many years. And I could see the love they had, the two of them, and the way they were, producing show after show. And he also taught a lot of Indian kids. And openly, I think people were appreciative of the service he was doing. All the Indian parents that I met, although I did hear a few remarks at the back saying, I'm happy that my daughter is going there because she's safe, which is not a nice thing to say, but so my awareness has been there, and one of my closest friends at work is also gay, and we do walks together and all that. So, but having said all that, when Mahita came up to us our initial reaction was shock, both myself and my wife. And she actually said, I am bi. She didn't say she's lesbian. She said she's bi. So we caught on that point and said, okay, you're bi, so why don't we find you a boy, and we'll do something and we'll introduce. And these kind of things kept going on. We didn't say yes initially, and then COVID started in 2020, and then for other reasons she decided to move to Melbourne for about 6-7 months to decide what she wants to do in the medical field and so on. And it was total lockdown in Melbourne. She was staying up with us at home, and then we connected through music again. Just going back a bit, Mahita has been learning from me and my brother since she was very small child. my gurus, Trivandrum and Katramans, have started the Veena for her when she was 7, but singing she started even earlier. And she always was very obedient as a child. Um, like, I don't know if she feels like Rumi feels about her mother, but whenever I would ask her to come and sit for practice, she would just come. So we would have like an hour and a half session every morning before she goes to school. So I had to wake her up at 5:30, 6 a.m. and then we would sit for Veena and then vocal as well. And that went on for many years till she went into college, and then after that kind of slowly changed different ways. So 2020, we are going through all this, practice together and all that. And I think it was one session, we were playing Kanakangi, Thodi, Varnam, and Atatalam. And then she was just following me like anything. We haven't played that for 2-3 years. And then she was just playing. And my mind was just going through all this and saying, here she does everything I ask her to do. And there's one thing she told us, and why am I objecting to it? And I was seeing all these walls, before me, and I was questioning myself, and tears started rolling my face. Then I told Mahita, look, I'm very happy for you. Whatever you want to do, we will fully support you. And that's a turning point for us, me, and then Shobha, also my wife as well. So, and then later on, I was just introspecting myself. What actually made that change? I think there are a couple of things. First was our immediate reaction as a parent is, oh, what will others say? How are our relatives going to take it? How are our friends going to take it? So that's one concern. And then how is she going to face the world? Because there's so much, it is problematic still, even in Australia. Life is not easy for queer people. So we're worried about all that. But then you say, okay, in all these worries, the most important thing is her happiness and who she is. We are forgetting that fact. And you say, okay, that is the number one. We have to make sure she is happy, and then everything will fall into place. If somebody is not okay with it, we are okay that they're not okay. So that's fine. So once that dawned on us, then it was all very clear. And then she said, we want to have a Hindu wedding. We went and did everything she asked for. And then we wanted to make sure all of our friends support her. And so we invited everybody. Everybody came, and it was a glorious. So, yeah, that is my view from my view.
Okay. So, in a sense, you also had to do some coming out yourself as a parent of a person in a queer relationship. So how is that coming out as a parent and ally for you in terms of the close family, extended family, people living in India? Yeah.
So we were very apprehensive, as I said before, how are the family and friends are going to take it, right? Yeah. So there's a comment I'm just reading. So we are very apprehensive, especially my mother, who's 90 years old, and my mother-in-law who's 84. My father-in-law had passed on by then, and then my one brother's family in Melbourne, and Shobha's two brothers' families in Melbourne. So we said, okay, let's tell the younger part of the family first. So we called my brother family, and then we spoke to them and Shobha's brothers and their wives. And they said, oh, congratulations, that's excellent, happy news. That's all they said. And I said, oh, what? We were expecting, questions, and we wanted to defend and all that. But, they just said, fine, that's fantastic news. When is the wedding? And then having crossed that, then we wanted to tell my mother and my mother-in-law. So Shobha's brother advised that, first let them meet Petra as a person. Once they know who she is, then you tell them, it's much, much easier. So Petra came down for, I think it was January last 2022, for Christmas and New Year. Both of them came, and then we had barbecues and picnics, and she stayed with us for 3-4 days, and she was lovely. She spoke to everybody. She was calling both mother and mother, says party, and all that. And they really loved her. And then we told them, this is what it is, and they're going to get married. And my mother said, oh, okay. I think one of the other things that helped in that journey also was one of her other friends, a girl, but I don't want to name her because I don't know if she's okay with me calling her out. She had a Hindu wedding about 3 years ago to her girlfriend in Melbourne. And my mother knows her family, and we all know her. So all I had to tell her was, Mahita is like that person, and she's getting married to her girlfriend. So it was easy for us to say as well. And then my mom asked, how is she going to have baby because she loves babies? Then my niece, who is a doctor as well, she said, Pati, don't worry, Pati. These days, everything is possible. And left it at that. So, and Shobha's mother, my mother-in-law, was very similar. We thought she's very traditional. She's not object. She took a weekend and she was just thinking to herself. And then on the Monday morning, she came to us and said, I'm very happy that she's found somebody that she loves, and I'll fully support her. And then she kept making every event in the wedding, even thing like Sumangali Prarthana and all those different, traditional things we had to do. She made sure we did everything. So, yeah. And with the friends, Ramki, the second part of the question, we didn't face any issues. We just told them, and they were all happy. They all wanted to come to Sydney as well for the wedding, but we invited some of the closest friends to Sydney, and then the rest of them came to the Melbourne reception as well.
Okay. Now, how about the music world, which is not necessarily family, though you have musicians in your family too, they seem to be quite fine. But the broader world, which you also inhabit, of kacheris and the music season in Madras and all of that, I'm sure a word would have got out, as it usually does. Did you face any apprehensions about that and how that might impact you as a musician, or her as a musician, considering she's been performing also? Yeah.
I think it's early days as far as the Chennai Indian music scene is concerned, because a lot of my musician friends from India and Chennai are Facebook friends, and they've seen, most of them send congratulatory, well, like you said, they've sent us congratulatory messages and so on. So I haven't faced any backlash or anything yet. What about you, Mahita? Do you want to answer that?
No, I mean, I think we're very lucky in terms of the community here and how they've been accepting. I haven't performed in Chennai for a long time. Not just in terms of like work and study and all of that kind of thing. It's very difficult. So I haven't really faced anything. But like Appa said, the wedding was only in April. So give them time, they'll come.
Right. I also heard you have a vocal teacher in Chennai from whom you learn. Does she know? How has she reacted, if it's okay to ask?
My question to me or Mahita?
Sorry, a question to Mahita, yeah.
So I'm not currently learning from her, but I learned for quite a while from Nandita Ravi. And I'm very grateful to her for, I think my vocal music and also my Veena music kind of grew leaps and bounds during that time. As far as I think they are aware. I know they also heard the recording of my Vegada singing. So I hope that I've done her somewhat proud in that.
Okay. Thanks.
I met them in Chennai last week, and they're very happy. In fact, I'm actually carrying some wedding gifts from Mahita from them.
Okay, that's awesome to know. Yeah. Both of you must have heard, seen Rumi and Apeksha share their experiences being in India, one of them being a queer dancer, the other being a trans musician and activist and so on. So obviously there are going to be, India versus the diaspora differences, but having lived abroad for many years, I've seen that a lot of, and again, my experience is limited to the United States, that a lot of people who moved to America in the 70s and 80s carry with them an image of India as hyper conservative. And many of my queer friends who are born and raised in the US actually have a harder time in some cases with their parents accepting them or supporting them compared to their counterparts in India. I'm sure the history of migration to Australia has been different, but do you find that some of the folks in the diaspora are actually much more conservative, or you've not had that experience?
I think that, like, generally, yes. I think, and it's often a case not just in the Indian diaspora, but in most migrant communities, that you cling to what you know and what is familiar. And for most people, that's, I think there was a large wave of Indian migration here in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So they're essentially taking those attitudes of wherever at the time, and bringing them here. But having said that, I think two things. Like, one, I've not faced any direct queer phobia in the community here. But on the flip side, although Appa has mentioned we have a friend who's married to a woman, that really was the only queer representation I saw. That and Chandravanu uncle, who is obviously like a huge figure here in terms of the community. So although we haven't faced anything, there's also no visibility or representation. And I think that's so important for just acknowledging that there are other ways of being, of living, of loving, so and that they are okay. So I hope that changes. And already, I think in being publicly myself, not that I am very public, I don't put a lot of stuff out on the internet, but even just that, sharing photos of my partner, sharing photos of our wedding, I'm getting messages from a lot of people saying like, oh, I didn't know you were queer, I am too. And so that I find really heartwarming. I mean, it's amazing. I think it's amazing. And I don't think I certainly, when I was growing up and kind of figuring out who I was, I think that the whole process would have been a lot easier had I had someone to look up to and be like, oh, this person is doing it, so clearly it's okay.
Right. Thank you. Srinivas, do you have any questions?
I would just like to say it was a really moving conversation, especially when I heard from your father, Ram. So, for me, I would say, for every queer person, parental acceptance is very important. And I think it's a journey for parents because we queer people, at least here in India, parents are still quite conservative. And it's harder for people to change, I would say, after a certain point of time in their life. I mean, it's a little difficult even for us. And this is not a generational thing that I'm talking about, but for people who are rooted in a certain culture, a certain way of thinking, the heteronormativity out there, unlearning all that and really accepting ourselves for who we are is really difficult. Whether it be in India or any other part of the world, for a queer person, you really have to unlearn whatever you've seen so far. Because, like, at least in India, there are no queer representations on mainstream media. We don't have any queer person to actually look up to and aspire to become. So we don't have all that. So, given the situation, parental acceptance is really valuable because we really have no avenues to express our thoughts. So everything, and we are a closed community, right? Indians are, South Asians basically are a very closed community. So we would like to talk about it within the four walls of our house. And, immediately we go to our parents because we don't have anyone else to talk about these things. So I would say it's really appreciable, sir, that you have really grown and you have accepted your daughter for who she is, and you've even seen her getting married, and that is really emotional for me. and for so many other countless queer folks who can only dream of such a such an occurrence in their life. So that was really an eye opener for me, and it is really great coming from someone in the Carnatic community because I think they need to hear this conversation. It was really great. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Mahita. Thank you very much, Ramnath. And it's been very, very moving to listen to your respective journeys as daughter and father. And your reflections were really, yeah, I've seen a lot of messages also on the Insta with people talking about parents and acceptance. So, yeah, thank you for that. So, so Srinivas, there is another person who would like to join who is a Carnatic vocalist. Karthik Hebbar, who would like to share a few points, and there's also Shruti from the United States, Shruti Kannan. So I'm just wondering if we can request them to join. If you see them, can you add them? Yeah. And thank you,
Yeah, I
Mahita.
will.
Thank you very much, Ramnath. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
just give
Yeah.
me 1 second. I'm trying to find out. Shruti, could you just say hi in the comment section because I can't recognize your ID? And Karthik, let me just
That
see.
would be
Uh,
Karthik Hebbar official. Yeah.
yes, Karthik Hebbar underscore presents. So I'm going to press it right
Yeah. Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Shruti, uh, could you just say hi, Shruti? Hi, Karthik.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe
So
we can
what were
start with
your
Karthik.
thoughts?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can start with Karthik, and if Shruti is able to log in, we can this thing. Yeah, thanks again, Ramnath and Mahita and Rumi and Apeksha. Over to you, Karthik. Thanks for being willing to join in. Oh, okay. So Shruti says, I can't join as I'm driving, but I'm happy to be here. Okay, thank you, Shruti. Yes.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Yes. So do you have any
What were
reflections?
your
You've been there observing the session. So do you have any reflections first on what you've listened to so far? And would you like to share some of your own experiences as a musician who is openly queer?
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed the session so far. I've listened to lot of like-minded people talking about the things that I'm talking about. Also, usually, I do talk a lot, so I've heard a lot of it, and I resonate with most of the things that are said here. Uh, uh, about my experiences, like I've done a lot of talking. So if there is anything particular I would like to ask out of that, I would be glad to answer. Other than the fact that one thing I strongly feel about most of the classical artists that I've known who are queer and all that, that I think we have a very toxic codependent relationship with this art. So it is an art that we cannot live, and it is an art that we don't want to be in, but we cannot live without it. And we find no space, but we fight for it, and but we don't get any space for it. So we try to create our own space, and in that our own space also we try to look for validation, and we do not get validated because there is a lot of punching down and a lot of invalidation that is happening and invisibilization that is happening to queer artists. So it is a very toxic codependent relationship. So, and it's a never ending struggle. I think I don't know for how long it's going to go on. As a classical vocalist, when I transitioned into dance, I've learned dance also for more than 25 years. So for me, it was easy to move into singing for dance also. I think the place is much more liberal. In the dance circle, there's a lot more breathing space, and you find a lot of friends, and you can get a sense of community, at least in the dance fraternity, I feel. As opposed to Carnatic music fraternity, where there is zero, community, sense of community, or I don't know. Like there are a lot of things that happened when I was like into the performing arena. When I moved into Chennai and I was beginning to perform, also there are a lot of things that broke my heart. Mm, One was, of course, feeling like a hypocrite because you're dealing with a lot of shame, and until and unless you learn to accept yourself, you're yourself, homophobic. There is a lot of internalized phobia, so you're struggling with that, and then there is a lot of shame about who you are, and to carry that with you everywhere you go. and you sing some song and people come and say, you know, so I could see Krishna, Rama in your singing, you're a divine soul and all that, and they want to hug you, and at that point you start cringing, because I know that all this appreciation will vanish in a snap the moment they know that I'm queer. So you live in this bubble, and there is constant anxiety because you know at any moment it can break down, and to live in that bubble of anxiety is very consuming, I think, for any artist. And other than that, there are a lot of things, like I had to question about the history of art, the way dance or music is looking at its history, the way artists even today you know, have no shame in punching down any voice that comes from the minority section. So it's easily punched down, they're invalidized, they're invisibilized, and people move on, because ultimately it is about people who have power. And who has the power? It is the Brahmin community. So there is no questioning that. And so we talk about intersectionality, we talk about art. These are all nice things to talk about, but as a queer person, I have to honestly say that intersectionality is not something that even we within the queer community embrace wholeheartedly. So to expect that from the dance is like another world altogether. So within ourselves, there is so much of phobia, there is so much of misunderstanding, invalidation. So I don't know how to expect that from a field that does not even see us in the first place. And then while learning music, there are a lot of things like Apeksha is neurodivergent. So I struggled with severe dyslexia all my life. And so I had problems with mathematics. I'm very strong with logic, but I struggle a lot with calculations. So I have dyscalculia also. And so I entered music at a time when music was maths. So even to some extent that is now. Raga is a scale, music is maths. And so if you can't do a very, you know, calculative korpu, or if you can't sing ragas like it is at a scale and not an emotive body, then you're invalidated as a musician. So for me, it was a very struggle to understand even the theory of music. So I had to study the theory of music and understand how music has evolved, and to see that, no, I don't have to agree with this and be here. So, you know, I'm okay with singing music. I'm okay with listening to just Branda Mukta all my life. I don't need anything else to survive. You know, I'm totally happy with that. So, I don't buy this idea of mathematics forcing every musician to follow one certain pattern and to use what is the flavor of the season, and what is happening in the season, what is work in the season, and everybody becoming clones of each other. So I have a very big problem of that. And when we are all becoming clones of each other, and there is individualities, you know, lost. So then you start questioning, it's just not about my queer existence alone. It's even about where art is going. So even that is a very problematic thing for me to understand and for me to digest. So I did a series on Pride on another forum last year. So during that time also, like I asked the most prominent dancers in India, and they all got back to me in a second, and they all sent their videos, their write-ups. And then I asked people from the community who are activists like Akai Padmashali and all. They're like just a message away, and they have all their videos and everything come. But from classical music, other than T.M. Krishna, nobody else bothered to react to me. I mean, I didn't contact the younger generation. I'm not saying there are no youngsters who are willing to do that. Like the stars, the senior level, I wanted them to speak about it. No, and many of them sent me an email saying that they're not comfortable talking about this and that they're not happy to do this. I got an open mail from many of the senior artists I look up to. So that was also for me like very reaffirming that no, this is not my family, this is not my community. And yeah, so like I can go on and on about this. So if you have something to ask, I would be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Karthik, for sharing these very candid views, a lot of which resonated with me. Srinivas, would you have some reflections or questions? And then I request you to also close when it's time. Yeah, go ahead, Srinivas.
Yeah, I mean, whatever Karthik said, I completely agree. And I would really like to say that, you know, we hear you, Karthik, and your experiences need to be validated. I mean, no one has a right to say that, you know, your voice doesn't matter or the things that you said doesn't matter, because they're very relevant to today's world. And I really hope that we have more conversations in the classical music space. So as you said, even for me, it is like, it is something that I really love, but it's also something that I question myself that if I were to talk about my queerness, will I even do what I'm doing presently? So we have to take that conflict and we have to handle it and we have to negotiate our anxiety associated with it. And it's not easy to do that. Like Apeksha said, art can be therapeutic, but it can also be really can mess with your head because you like it and you want to do it, but you also don't want to do it because of you're not never going to get validated. Your feelings are never going to be understood by a certain section of people. But like one thing that I would like to say is that the younger generation is definitely changing in the classical music space. There are so many performers who support queer people and support queer causes. But it's a little hard for even the allies to come out, I would say, in the classical space, music space. But we're getting there, and I hope this conversation serves as a starting point, at least, to accelerate change in the classical music world. So thank you so much for being there. We're already 2 minutes over the time that we planned. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being there. It was
Thank you.
lovely talking to you. Thank you, Karthik.
Yeah.
And
And
Ramki, I don't have any closing thoughts. If you would like to
okay.
end,
Well,
I'm fine with that.
yeah. I just want to thank everybody, Karthik, Mahita, Ramnath, Apeksha, and Rumi, and you, Srinivas, for leading the conversation. I hope to have more conversations like this. And thanks, SNS and Sai Shruti, for making this possible. And happy Pride season. And yeah, let's be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sai, Shruti, and Shreya. You both have been really amazing. This wouldn't have happened without your encouragement. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.